The Notebook, Eddie Howe eyes formation change for Arsenal acid test. Newcastle players head out to watch the darts, while the Magpies clear rat infestation from St. James Park. It would be like a doctor doing away with their trusty stethoscope. But word is reaching us of Eddie Howe considering a change of formation at Arsenal this weekend. We have been told that a 3-5-2 system has been talked about and worked on in training recently. It would still take a big leap for Howe not to start with the 4-3-3 he has used in every game so far this season, but the task at Arsenal could well lend itself to a tweak. Tino Livramento would likely come in, but not at the expense of Dan Burn, who would move into a three-man backline. Wingbacks in the form of Livramento and Kieran Trippier would offer better protection against Arsenal's wide men. Although Alexander Isak and Joe Willock have returned to training this week, the expectation was they would be used from the bench, although Isak was being considered for a start on Friday. Either way, their availability could well sway Howe's thinking. Is it worth trying to contain Arsenal with a more solid and compact 3-5-2 before introducing a potential match winner late in the game? For once, the head coach has options. The name's in the frame to replace Dan Ashworth. On the subject of change, I spoke in our Mail Sport YouTube video last Thursday about Newcastle redefining the remit of their sporting director in the wake of Dan Ashworth's likely defection to Manchester United. Those whispers remain, and, when it comes to recruitment, it could well be that the next appointment arrives on the understanding that scouting and the identification of targets is done by others. It is a frustration for some bemusement, even when Newcastle's signings are listed as those of Ashworth. In truth, he saw deals over the line, but the scouting of players and the final call on the signing was with others. Steve Nixon, the head of recruitment, is well respected by the owners and undertakes a lot of the duties sometimes mistakenly thought to be the job of a sporting director or director of football. Howe, meanwhile, is very hands-on with recruitment, perhaps more so than any other manager in the Premier League. He does not wait for players to be signed for him and will never simply adhere to the role of head coach. Howe is across everything and takes responsibility for every player brought in. That being the case, it is not necessary for Newcastle to recruit a sporting director who is seen as a transfer guru that, you suspect, would only lead to internal conflict. Lessons across the entire role will be learned from Ashworth's 20-month tenure, and sources say the job description is likely to be redrawn. Lots of names have been mentioned in recent days as a possible replacement for Ashworth, none of them coming from inside the club, I should add, but two put to us that are interesting are Brentford paired Lee Dykes and Phil Giles. The latter is a Newcastle fan and is Brentford's current sporting director, while Dykes is the club's technical director. For now, though, a combination of Howe, Nixon, Chief Executive Darren Eales and owners Amanda Stavely and Merdad Godusi will fill what void has been left by Ashworth's impending departure. Magpies chase off rats infestation. Speaking of departures, I can reveal that Newcastle have chased an infestation of rats at St. James Park. When work began on the new fan zone behind the Gallowgate end last month, it disturbed the rodents, who made their way into the stadium for a period. The rats would scour the stands post-match for leftover food. However, ground staff were quick to act and specialists were brought in to deal with the issue, which has now been resolved. Meanwhile, I understand the fan zone is on track to be finished in time to show England's matches at Euro 2024 this summer, with an outside chance it could be opened for the pre-tournament friendly against Bosnia at St. James Park on June 3. Nick Pope could feature in as many as the final 10 matches of Newcastle's Premier League season, plus a possible FA Cup semi-final and final. I can reveal that the goalkeeper's sideline since December following shoulder surgery had a little setback concerning a pectoral muscle in January, but that has not impacted his return date, which has actually been brought forward. If all goes well, Pope will be back in action at the end of March or start of April, and that could mean 10 league games if Newcastle progress to the last 8 of the FA Cup. Their forthcoming home fixture against Crystal Palace will be put back. This would also give the 31-year-old plenty of time to prove his worth to Gareth Southgate ahead of Euro 2024. Meanwhile, I understand Elliot Anderson is back on the grass at Newcastle's training ground but is more likely to play again after the March international break. He is recovering from a stress fracture in his back and will not be rushed. It could be that he plays an under-21 fixture before returning to the senior fold, and there are some that believe this would be a wise move, given others have broken down or suffered a recurrence of injuries this season. House Coffee grumbles. Howe did not like it when his press conference was disturbed on Friday morning. Not by a reporter's mobile phone, but by a coffee machine deciding this was the time to reheat, or whatever that loud noise indicates. The Toon boss shot the machine a look of absolute contempt, and a colleague of mine duly acted and scurried for the plug. A cold stare leading to cold coffee, you might say. It did remind me to always set my mobile phone to airplane mode, however Newcastle players surprise Howe with Dart's visit. The manager was in better fettle, I think, when admitting he had no idea a group of his players went to watch Luke Littler play Premier League darts on Thursday night. Dan Byrne, Sean Longstaff, Harvey Barnes, Mark Gillespie, Paul Dummett, Elliot Anderson and Matt Targett were all present at the Utilita Arena in Newcastle. Howe said, "I wasn't aware of that, so, you'll need to give me a list of names, please." Hopefully it wasn't a late night? Maybe they should have been in fancy dress. When Howe does a little research into the team night out, I have no doubt he will be relieved to see their tables scattered with empty bottles of water. That is, here's a little puzzler to finish with that was put to us by a member of Newcastle staff before Friday's press call. 33 players have taken penalties for Newcastle in the Premier League. Only 4 of them have never scored for Newcastle from the spot. Name the 4. The answer will be revealed at 6 p.m. on Friday evening on our new NUFC dedicated WhatsApp channel.